hello, Nicci.
Hello, and there's the Nicci without the French at the moment, but he's about to run into the room. So
I understand.
hello, and it's very nice indeed to be here.
No, very, very good to have you. Well, hello there.
Well, thank you for inviting us.
Hello, sorry. I'm arrived. I'm here.
What were you doing, Sean? What was? Are there errands to run, or what were you doing just now?
We live in a very kind of chaotic, lovely chaotic house. So it's not just Nicci and me, but we have families and friends who we're all stuck here. So
Understand? As we all are. So good to have you. It's a day. It's a weird time, but obviously some stuff just keeps on going, and maybe we can put some comfort in the fact that some things just continue like normal. You have a new book coming out today in the Netherlands, right?
Is it today?
Yes.
Well, there we are. So actually, as writers, we're very used to socially isolating ourselves. So we're one of the lucky ones.
And also, we really feel that one of the things, I don't know what people are saying in the Netherlands, but I think one of the things people are finding comfort in this very, very strange time is reading a book and losing yourself in a book.
And that's when you're not isolated anymore, when the walls fall down.
Yeah. I think your books are incredibly popular in Holland. There was a big debate in our book week, a famous book week that we have in the Netherlands, where actually a lot of books get sold, and there was actually a lot of debate where there was someone complaining about the lack of intellectual books that bookstores sell, and then your books were being triumphed as actually the books that kept a lot of bookshops open in this counter argument. So I think a lot of booksellers are actually very, very thankful of the work that you are doing, and I think a lot of them you actually know, right? Because you before this all started. Go ahead.
That's right. Now, what I was going to say is one of the things that's really strange to us. This is going to be one of the first. We have, I think, for about the last 20 years. We have come over to the Netherlands every year, and usually sometimes twice a year. And we've come and we've travelled around. I feel that Nicci and me have probably been to almost every bookshop in the Netherlands.
We have been to so many of your beautiful bookshops and met lots of readers and met lots of booksellers. And in a way, I mean, what's strange for us is that, in a way, when a book gets published and you meet readers and they have reactions, that's when you kind of know what you've written. That's when a book comes alive. So we're not doing that in person this year, and it's quite strange to be sitting here and knowing that it's there in the Netherlands with readers.
Go ahead.
I was saying also this new book is, it comes out it's published, as you say, today in the Netherlands, but it's not coming out in Britain until the autumn. So this is our first. Normally, when we come to the Netherlands, it's the first time the book is published.
Why does it happen? Why do the Dutch get the premiere so often with your books?
It's because you are all so fantastically brilliant at speaking English. And so there's this sense that if it came out in English at the same time as it came out in Dutch, Dutch readers would all be able to buy it in English, which wouldn't be fair on Dutch publishers.
Understand.
Yeah. So that's it. And it's just become a tradition, really. It's become a tradition that our first place of publication is always the Netherlands.
Interesting. Is there a lot of other countries that you tour bookshops through? Is that a particular?
Not
thing
as many
as
in the Netherlands. I mean, actually,
really,
we've just consistently come to the Netherlands and visited bookshops, and we've gone to tiny bookshops and huge bookshops and met lots and lots of readers, and that's what we love to do. This time every year we're in the Netherlands, but we're not in the Netherlands, but we're in your living room, so.
Yeah, I think we all spend a little bit of time thinking about all these entrepreneurs that have a pretty hard time right now. Is there anything you'd like to say to the booksellers that currently cannot have you in your shops, and that are probably super eager to share the new book with their customers, maybe via the web now?
So the first thing I'd like to say to them before anything else about this new book is, writers write alone. We don't write alone, but writers, it's a very lonely business. And people often think of writers as kind of being in isolation from the world anyway. But we absolutely know that we're part of a team, which include our publishers and editors, and include the booksellers, and also the readers as well, but the booksellers above all. And we are intensely grateful for the work that they've done to make us kind of popular in the Netherlands, that we know we could not have been successful without them being on our side and being so kind of open to our books. So the first thing that we want to say to them before anything else is just thank you for being there and providing people with books at this most peculiar and radically uncertain time.
Yeah, can I also say that, and it's such a, there are certain jobs that, you know, what I hope is that some booksellers are able to, even if they can't have crowds of people coming in, maybe they can find a way of sending books out, or, you know, arranging for people to collect them. I also want to make a kind of promise from us that as soon as we can, as soon as this terrible time is over, we will come over to the Netherlands and meet
whether
our
we're
friends
invited
there.
or not. We'll be there.
Yeah, so.
Yeah, because actually, and one of the things we've been talking about a lot with our family and our friends is what the world is going to be like after these strange days are over, and what good can come out of this. I mean, awful things will come out of this, but maybe some good things will come out of it, and things that maybe we'll all learn to value even more the things which are precious. And one of the things which are precious are bookshops and booksellers and books and readers, and that great community of writers and readers and booksellers. And so, yeah.
I was talking to a famous sort of thinker in the Netherlands last week, and he said that he expects, if we come out of this crisis, that maybe like after the Great Depression, the Roaring '20s came, that maybe there is going to be a very different time again, and sort of a new period that starts after this whole ordeal that we're all going through. Can you imagine that this crisis influences the writing that you'll do for the next period, or don't you think this will change many things?
So first of all, I think it's going to change everything in ways that we simply can't begin to imagine now. I have no idea what the meaning of the coronavirus is. It's just got so many extraordinary implications. And before even saying about what we would do with writing, is I think it's true that lots of people are saying that we cannot go back to living the way that we had been living before this happened, that there's some kind of lesson that we've all got to learn from this. As for our writing, right, we haven't properly talked about this. What we're definitely not going to do is immediately write a straightforward coronavirus novel. I think some publishers must be dreading the kind of great flood of books that will come out of this, that just meet it head on. And I mean, if for instance, after 9/11, there were lots of novelists who immediately wrote novels about 9/11, and most of them didn't work. It was too raw and too soon to know what the meaning of it was. And the better books about it that came out were books that kind of dealt with it obliquely almost, but surely it will feed into how people think about the world that they live in, how people think about the way they live, about people, about what it's like to touch people, about bodies, about the meaning of time, about isolation. It's quite, sorry, I'm talking too much, I'm going to stop in a minute. The book that we've just written, strangely, the one that is published today, House of Correction, is actually set in a prison cell. So in some strange way, it's about isolation.
I think we wrote our coronavirus
we
novel
couldn't,
before coronavirus. because in a way our idea of it is we had the idea of a woman has to solve a crime while trapped in prison, while she can't go anywhere, she can't go to any of the places. So sometimes it's absolutely, and so it's a novel about claustrophobia and trying to find freedom while you're actually in a prison cell. So but I think, as I think Nicci said, I think there's a terrible fear that lots of writers are sitting in their rooms around the world writing their coronavirus play and their coronavirus sitcom and their coronavirus
some might
film.
Be brilliant. Some might be brilliant, but lots won't be brilliant. And actually, this book that we've just written, which is about isolation, I think if we had that idea now, we'd worry about it because it would feel too on the nose, too up to the moment. So,
It's good that we've done it. Good that it's finished. Too late to change.
So interesting. Do you have a different sense now? You know that people are reading your books in the last couple of weeks. It probably has a lot of different, even older books that you've written probably have a different sort of not a different meaning, but it really means something different for people, I think, because in this time, I think everyone is looking for relief when you're overwhelmed with news and bad news, particularly. It's really nice to sometimes flee a little bit, escape a little bit. Is it?
Yeah.
Is it?
Yeah.
Is that in a way?
Sorry. I think
Go
that's
ahead.
what novels, I think that's what literature of all kinds offers. And it doesn't need to be an escape. It doesn't need to be escapism if it's escape. It just needs to be, as I was saying earlier, about kind of walls falling down, about being behind somebody else's eyes, about being in someone else's world, about entering someone else's imagination. And it's a way of connecting people when they can't be connected, you know. That, so I think that thing about kind of culture at the moment, not just words, music, all these different forms of culture are ways of bringing people together who are feeling very kind of lonely and separated from other people. So it feels it has this kind of immense kind of weight and importance. I mean, I don't mean our books, I mean all those forms of communication which can help connect people across these great divides that have opened up.
I mean, I think one of the things I feel it's such a strange time, and you know, just at the moment, as we are sitting here, for example, I mean, there are so many things we could never have imagined, and you know, the Prime Minister of the United Kingdom is at the moment in a hospital in intensive care, fighting for his life. So there are other people in, you know, there's a lot of terrible suffering going on. So that's on one, and so all of us are in a state of shock, but also because we're all being suddenly locked inside, you know, the streets are empty. In a way, it's one of these strange times which you need to feel, you've got to think about your life, you've got to reflect, and that might mean reading books, or it might mean listening to music. But I think, and also, and going back, I think what you were saying before, there have been certain really big moments in history, you know, that sometimes they've been plagues like the Black Death, and sometimes they've been big wars, and when they finished, everything has changed. But no one could. One of the things that's so strange is no one could have predicted what the change would be. So when we're all, I think a lot of us are saying we think it'll be different, but but how it'll be different? I think there'll be things we'll look. You know, when historians look back on it, they'll say this was the moment when X happened, and it won't be what we thought. You know, I think there'll be, you know, but there will be. Life will not just go back to 3 months ago. You know, I mean, someone said that we're going to have that when people talk about, I mean, I'm sure it's true in the Netherlands and everywhere, when they talk about a history, it'll now be before BC and AC, before coronavirus and after coronavirus, and they're going to be, you know, things will be different. And I think in a way, the least interesting books and films will be actually books about something funny that happened during the you know, the actual plague. The interesting things will be things that look a bit deeper, look at strange, you know, kinds of anxiety that it showed, or you know, things that, you know, that, I mean, in a way, that's what writers and artists are there, is to see the things, you know, I mean, you know, it's very useful to have philosophers and political scientists analysing it, but I think when people tell stories, it's always from as Nicci was saying, it's from an oblique angle.
Yeah, maybe we'll reevaluate what the value is of maybe from journalism and facts on the one end of the spectrum, and that's all people. I'm sure that people recognize that value right now, but also maybe a reevaluation of philosophy. Indeed, the more abstract arts, actually in these times maybe more important than ever, even maybe. So it's.
Yes, I think that's right. And to think about what is precious, what has importance, what has value. And also, I feel that there's a way in which we need, you know, maybe this will teach us to think more about the planet that we live on, you know, the climate that we're wrecking, the kind of the world that we've been destroying, that will start to value things that we've been kind of rubbishing for so long.
But also, I'd say when sometimes when Nicci and I talk about the books we write, what we're really, one of the things that interests us is how fragile ordinary life is. I think lots of us go through life feeling, well, yesterday was a bit like the day before, and today is a bit like yesterday, and tomorrow will be like today. And just this feeling we're all safe and we're all in control. And there's something shocking when something like this happens. Suddenly this disease comes out of China, and we don't have a cure for it, and we don't know what to do, and we don't know how to respond to it. And it shows that life is a very fragile thing. And I think people hundreds of years ago, life was so fragile and dangerous. They knew that all the time. And I think we think we control everything. We think we've got a cure for everything. We think our politicians, if there's a problem comes, then they can solve it. And there's something very, it's as if there's been an earthquake, and I think maybe all of us are looking around and wondering, what are we going to do with this new knowledge of our insecurity?
And that's basically, if you're saying that this understanding that the world is more fragile than we normally think, we might reevaluate that we have to sort of be very careful with the world around us. That's basically
there's partly that the world is more fragile than we've come to think, but also we are more fragile, that we are more vulnerable, that we don't have control, that kind of, you can be as rich and successful and famous and vigorous and healthy and purposeful, and still you're vulnerable. And you always were, but you didn't understand that. And one didn't understand that.
And actually, one thing I've felt, and many of us have felt in recent years, it was almost one world for the rich and one world for the poor. And of course, in lots of ways, that is true. But one thing that's been really startling about this in the UK is, we're sitting in a little village out in the countryside, and almost no one here has got it yet, anyway. But the government the British government has been hit really hard by it. That almost all of them have got the virus. Despite you think that they should have the protection and they should have all the best care, and and their even being prime minister is no protection. So that's. I think people. I mean, it was interesting that I think we were sitting. We were having dinner last night with a group of younger than us, but we're all grown ups. And when we suddenly got the news on our mobile phones that the prime minister had gone into intensive care, it was like something like when the Twin Towers fell, and people were absolutely stunned. And there was a feeling, nothing is safe. There isn't a safe place. And some people might say there's something. Maybe that's a good lesson. I mean, it's terrible. Of course, we're all hoping that he gets better, as quickly as possible. But maybe we need to be reminded, that life is fragile.
This is very valuable, and also it's a difficult time, but also a fascinating time if you try to imagine what kind of consequences this has over the longer term. I want to thank you so much for taking the time to talk to us.
Thank you for having us.
It's a pleasure to talk to you.
Thank you.
Have a great afternoon.
Yeah, thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.